Welcome to Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. In the 1970s and 80s, traditionalist educators insisted that a great education should include lots of structure, specific standards of performance, and a heavy dose of memorization of key facts and concepts. These, they assured, would help our students to enter the workforce already proficient in language and writing skills, in mathematics, science, social studies, civics, and some critical thinking. Are those skills enough for an Inland Empire student to succeed in the current and coming workforces? What do students in the Inland Empire need to know today? Are our schools preparing our graduates with what they really need to know and preparing our community with up-and-coming graduates ready to take our local businesses and industry into a brighter future? That is what we're discussing today with two of the best experts we have locally. Paul Granio is the president and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. He joins us later in the show. But first, we're joined by Michael Goss, the director of the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Michael, thanks for taking our call.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Before we get started, could you describe for us the kind of research that you do at the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research?
Yes. So my name is Michael Goss. I'm the director of the Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research at the California Community Colleges, hosted at Chaffey College. And I study the Inland Empire Desert region, which is otherwise known as Riverside and San Bernardino counties combined. So what I do is I look at the labor market, and my job with the COE is we're a grant-funded initiative through the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and we provide the colleges with evidence that these programs they want to create, these career education hands-on programs they want to create, lead to jobs that are in demand and also offer a self-sustainable wage within the region. So the Center of Excellence is responsible for providing that information to the colleges. Like I said, I study the Inland Empire Desert region, and we study the labor market. And what the labor market is it's a nominal market where workers seek employment, employers are seeking workers, and their services are exchanged for wages. Mm-hmm. There's three major aspects to the labor market that we study. First is the labor force, and most of us recognize that as the unemployment rate. And what the unemployment really is it's our number of unemployed people over our total labor force. And our total labor force is the number of unemployed people and also the number of people who are working. And unemployed people are the people who are actively able to work, available to work, and looking for work. And they're all residents 16 plus in the region. The current unemployment rate in the Inland Empire Desert region as of December 2021, which is our latest data point, was 5.1%, down from 8.6% in January 2021. We have an annual average. In 2021, there was an annual average of 7.2% unemployment rate in the region. Out of the 51 major metros, largest metros in the United States with 1 million plus residents, with one being the lowest unemployment rate in the nation and 51 being the highest, the Inland Empire Desert region ranks at number 48 at 5.1%. We're right between Houston, Texas metro at 4.8% and the New York City metro at 5.5%, which generally 5.5% is generally regarded as a pretty low unemployment rate. So we technically have a pretty low unemployment rate right now. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Still the dynamic of people looking for work. We're down from the height of the pandemic. We reached all the way up to our highest unemployment ever recorded in the region in April 2022 of 15.2%. So we've come down quite a bit in the almost 2 years since the pandemic started. In 2020, our average annual unemployment rate was 9.7%, and in 2019, just for reference, just before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, our unemployment rate was annual average of 4.1%.
Are there other aspects of the labor market?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. The other aspect of the labor market that we study is industry employment, which is otherwise our count of jobs. So everybody wants to know how many jobs there are added to the region. And a job is interesting because we count all the jobs within the region. One person can actually hold several jobs. So each of those jobs is counted within the area. And typically jobs are only counted if there's an employee and employer relationship. So it doesn't count independent contractors, business owners, the self-employed, or our private household workers, which are otherwise known as our gardeners. Maybe you have a babysitter, or even a housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
they're not considered your employee for the most part. So in December 2021, which is our last data point, we added 2,300 more jobs to the region, to 1.579 million jobs in the region as of December 2021. Over the year in 2021, between December 2021 and December 2022, we added 66,000 more jobs to the region, and much of that could be attributed to just recovery from the pandemic. We're up about 4.4%. And we added about an annual average about a monthly average about 5,500 jobs every month in 2021. Biggest growth that we saw, it was in our accommodations and food services sector, which was heavily affected by the pandemic.
Yeah.
It grew by 23% and added 26,000 more jobs, but it's still down about 10% from its pre-pandemic figure, which is in February 2020, which was considered the last month unaffected by the pandemic. Another fast-growing sector is our transportation and warehousing sector, a very critical sector to the Inland Empire desert economy. It added about 10,000 jobs in 2021, up about 5%. And it's actually increased by 48,000 jobs since February 2020, and it's up nearly 32%. So it was a heavily fast increasing sector because many of us were at home and depended on those goods and services getting delivered to our homes. Another fast growing sector is our healthcare and social assistance. It's up about 8,000 jobs or 3%. And it's up about 4,300 jobs since our pre-pandemic levels. And another sector I want to highlight real quick is our other services. And people wonder what that is. And just it's a lot of miscellaneous small mom and pop type facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Think hair, nail salons, barbershops. That sector increased by 19% in 2021, at 7,000 more jobs. But it's still down about 4,000 jobs from pre-pandemic levels. And at the COE, we mostly study occupations. So occupations are they're really just a collection of knowledge, skills, and abilities and tasks. And that combination makes an occupation. That's actually what people do for work. And what we do at the COE is we study which occupations are in demand and offer a self-sustainable wage within the region.
So, Michael, we've clearly had huge losses, but what would you say from your research are the most in-demand careers right now and maybe even in the very near future here in the Inland Empire?
Yeah, thank you so much. So when we do look at the Center of Excellence, when we do look at the economy, there's different aspects to look at. So we look at that labor force, we look at jobs. The other aspect of the labor market are the types of jobs that are available within the region. Specifically, we look at occupations of what people do for work. And occupations really are just a collection of knowledge, skills, and abilities that lead to a specific occupation. So when we look at occupations of the region with the Center of Excellence, because we are with the California Community College, we look at those middle skill jobs. So there's those jobs that require more than a high school diploma, but less than a bachelor's degree to enter employment. And when we look at high quality occupations, we look at these high quality occupations in the region. We're looking at occupations that have at least 100 annual job openings in the region. Mm-hmm. And a job opening is jobs that will be available because they're expanding. We just need more. We have more business activity in the region. Plus, to backfill those jobs that people leave because they move out of the region, people retire, they switch occupations, maybe they move on to be a manager. So we look at those annual job openings. And the other thing we look at is, does the occupation offer a high wage? We set a benchmark of $24.36 per hour in the region, or $51,500 annually as a benchmark. And we look to see if it offers a median wage that meets that self-sustainable high wage criteria. It's important to look for high wages in the region because at the Inland Empire, it's relatively cheaper to live in the Inland Empire than it is California as a whole. Yeah. Even cheaper than our neighboring counties like LA, Orange County. But it's 28% high. The cost of living is 20% higher in the Inland Empire than is the nation overall. So when we look at that $24.36 an hour, it really comes out to around $20 an hour when you consider the cost of living in the Inland Empire.
Yeah. How would you say we're doing as a region in keeping up with the workforce demand?
As our president mentioned during the State of the Union, the community colleges are America's best kept secret. But they shouldn't be. We offer fantastic programs that are aligned to the need of our employers within the region. And we're doing a lot of great work behind the scenes, marketing our programs, describing our outcomes, our successes and outcomes of the students who exit these programs. I'm working on a mapping project, GIS mapping project, where we're inventorying every single career education program in the Inland Empire, not only at the community colleges, but also with our partners at the Alliance for Education at the San Bernardino County Superintendent's Office. We're inventorying every career education program, not only at the community colleges, but also at our K-12 system. We have a great strong course program that was developed by the state, injecting money into our career education program, so we have the latest equipment and we can increase our enrollments within the system. And it's never too late for those who want to come back and level up their skills at the California community colleges.
Are there particular industries that you believe are economically critical to the Inland Empire? Before you answer that, we need to take a quick break. We're speaking with Michael Goss, the director of the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Are inland Southern California schools properly preparing our kids and college students for the jobs coming to our region? We'll find out more in just a moment. Coming up, the CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. Plus, later on, a Moreno Valley High School work experience teacher has a unique way of getting her students excited about learning and getting ready for the workforce. We'll hear from her as well. I'm Lacey Kendall. This is Education Insight. Welcome back to Education Insight. We're joined by Michael Goss, the director of the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Mr. Goss, before the break, I asked if there are particular industries that you believe are economically critical to the Inland Empire.
That's a great question. So the best way I've ever heard the Inland Empire Desert region described is that we are bedrooms and storage. And that's absolutely true. People live in the Inland Empire and they commute out to the larger regions. That's why we see traffic in the morning going to LA, Orange County, and then coming back in the afternoon. So ultimately, the goal of community colleges is to develop those programs so we can upskill and educate our population. But right now, the most important industries within our area is the transportation sector, transportation warehousing. It's 3 times more concentrated here in the Inland Empire than it is on the nation overall. An average wage per occupation at about $60,000, so above that living wage standard that we talked about earlier. And it's expected to grow by 30% and add 54,000 jobs in the next 5 years. Another great sector to look at is construction. The average wage in that sector is $70,000 a year, expected to add 11,000 jobs over the next 5 years and grow by 8%. And then let's not forget our healthcare. We are a bedroom community, so there are people that live here. We need to increase our healthcare and social assistance sector is going to grow by 15% over the next 5 years and add about 35,000 more jobs.
Wow. What would you say we could do as a region to be more competitive going forward?
Absolutely. So we could be more competitive. We need to keep our eye on that, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding that should be coming to California. As we mentioned, transportation and warehousing is the biggest sector, and in construction. Somebody's got to build that sector out.
You're listening to Education Insight. We're joined on the telephone by Michael Goss, the director of the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Are our schools, colleges, and universities properly preparing students for the top career positions coming to the Inland Empire? Today, we're asking the 2 top local experts. Michael, what are some of the most significant challenges that we're facing in regards to training and meeting the needs of businesses in the region?
So that's such a great question. There's so many great programs within our region, and there's so much demand for so many occupations right now. One occupation I'm thinking about in particular is registered nurses. Almost every one of our registered nursing programs in the region is they're meeting the full capacity. And there's so much demand for this occupation that even at full capacity, there's still a gap. And this is a great opportunity. This is a great job to fill in the region. It offers a median annual wage of about $52.44 an hour. Just the demand for some jobs is incredible.
Yeah, sounds like it. Do you see a match between the top degrees and credentials that are being offered here in our region and even the current needs of employers?
Right. So we did a study about a year ago on looking at each of the colleges and seeing what types of programs that are available and what are the opportunities to fill those gaps. Because not only do we have so much demand for jobs that exist right now, but there's also jobs that in the future, we always say that we're training kids right now, maybe in our elementary schools, for jobs that don't exist in the future. And I can tell you, I was pleasantly surprised that the community colleges are actually fulfilling the need for the jobs in the region. But we have so many growth opportunities, is particularly in construction. That's one of our biggest growing sectors. We definitely need some more construction programs in the region, and we definitely need more capacity to keep building up our healthcare programs. So there's just incredible demand. And also looking forward, we're hearing news that how much cybersecurity is important. This is another area that we definitely need to fill. Is more people with cybersecurity training specifically, and also people with just cybersecurity skills in general. It's applicable to almost every single job these days.
Yeah. You mentioned in home construction. Are you talking about the need being workforce, home builders, or in administrative jobs, or both?
Oh, construction. Yes, definitely. We need more construction people. Those typical construction workers that you think of, they're hopefully we can get a good piece of that federal infrastructure funding. That will just need more. We'll have more demand for those types of workers. Mm-hmm. We definitely need more housing in the region. I would say we definitely have a housing shortage within our region. So more house builders, more road builders. But also, when you think about a certain sector, they also have need for jobs that you don't typically think of. So working for the community colleges, my number one question when somebody asks, I tell them I work for the community colleges is, what do you teach? And I'm like, I don't teach. I provide this information. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing for many different industries. So there's a lot of support, and there's a lot of demand for support activity to support the activity of the industries. And cybersecurity is actually a great example. There's a lot of firms that are not involved directly in cybersecurity, but they definitely have need to protect their internet infrastructure that they have at their facility, even if they're in construction or if they're in retail or in finance.
The question I got to ask is, how has COVID-19 changed the workforce here in the Inland Empire?
So we hear a lot of news about the COVID-19 has driven people from big cities more inland, and that's true for the Inland Empire. Overall, we've seen less people in the state. We've definitely seen a population decline, but we've actually seen a modest population increase in the Inland Empire. And we've also seen a modest increase in our labor force as well. We see the labor force decreasing in other parts of the state. So labor force, again, is our total number of employed, those working, and those and the unemployed, those actively seeking work. So we've actually seen a growth in the Inland Empire area as well. We definitely seen we've seen retirements happen. There was a lot of talk about a gray tsunami maybe 5 years ago. It was a big deal. We didn't really see it, and I think we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see those eligible people retire and exit the workforce. The unemployment rate is so low right now that it's almost a little worrying that we don't have any more slack in the labor market. And that could be why some employers are having trouble finding workers.
Yeah. This is Education Insight. Michael, why is access to and the understanding of regional workforce data so critical to improving educational institutions and outcomes? Explain that if you would.
I would. So we have a lot of investments coming down with our strong workforce funding from the California state. So understanding where we should put those investments is critical. Understanding where we should build apprenticeship programs at our community colleges, where we should build pre-apprenticeship programs at our K-12 high schools, and create more opportunities for work-based learning more opportunities at the K-12s and the community college for career exploration. Understanding so that students understand what types of careers and opportunities are out there. I think there's a lot of talking about cross-disciplinary training. So not only those people who understand their profession, but also having maybe an artistic background, so they can give them a creativity boost. We're also developing that mapping project, so we could build awareness of what types of programs what types of career education programs are out there. And it's really building those conversations between the K-12s and the community colleges, so we can understand where the resources are and how we can efficiently train our workforce. And also, are we training towards programs where there's available employment as well? So we're understanding where the types of industries and businesses are located, and are our programs located close by to that industry need?
Yeah. Michael, the big question for this program today has got to be this. Do we actually have the right balance of career and technical education programs and four-year programs to keep the talent pipeline full and meet the needs of businesses? And if your answer is no, what's got to change?
No, I think we have a great mix of programs out there to meet the needs of the workers. I can't speak for the 4-year programs because we mainly focus on the community colleges, but I will tell you the community colleges have great associate degree for transfer programs, and the community colleges are looking for ways to increase that transfer rate, decrease the time it takes to get that transfer to a California State University facilities within the state. We did study each of the community colleges and their program offerings, and yes, I'm happy to report that many of the colleges are training. They have programs that are very relevant to their immediate need of their employers within the area. But there's still tons of opportunity, particularly to increase employment in our healthcare system and construction in particular.
Michael Goss, the director of the Inland Empire and Desert Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today and laying this out for us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You're listening to Education Insight. Today, we're talking with economic experts to find if our schools and colleges are thinking about the high-paying industries coming to the Inland Empire and adjusting accordingly. We're joined by Paul Granio, the president and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. Paul, welcome to Education Insight.
Happy to be here.
What are the greatest economic challenges facing the Inland Empire today?
Well, I think there's several, and we have to kind of look at the Inland Empire like a balloon, and our balloon has a couple of pins that could pop it, and we have to be careful about that. So I think our number one issue economically is our educational attainment. So our baccalaureate degree attainment for regions of over 1 million people sits at the bottom. And so about 21% of our 4.6 million people have a baccalaureate degree. And so that makes it very hard for us to participate in the innovation economy. And so many of our young people who want to work in tech have to leave the region. And that's not good for us. So I think we're doing a lot of work as a region. Certainly Growing Inland Achievement is a leader in us trying to deal with that baccalaureate attainment, and we're going to try and change that. But it makes us very dependent on blue-collar jobs. And so those are jobs that we have to make sure that we maintain. We have to constantly remind people that our people need jobs, and we need to make sure that they have them.
Well, with the disparities that you identified, what are some of the projected challenges that we're likely going to face in the coming years, Paul?
So another one of those pins that could pop our balloon is automation. And so the Brookings Institute has done some work, and they predict that up to 47% of our jobs could be displaced due to automation. Dr. Johannes Munoz at the University of Redlands, doing the same type of study, says it's 63% of our jobs. And so it's absolutely critical for us to make sure that we're working with the employer community that we know what they are looking for in their workforce, and that we're aligning all of our education workforce training to the needs of the employers. That way we can make sure that displacement is as minimalized as possible.
How would you say we're doing as a region when it comes to the training and education of a workforce to meet the needs of our employers out here?
I think that there's a lot of good work being done. Certainly, both counties have workforce investment boards that are investing money into workforce training. The community colleges, we have 12 in Riverside and San Bernardino counties that are very key and critical to workforce training. But through the COVID pandemic, many of those classes couldn't be taught in person, right? So if you're going to learn to do electronics and you need to work on the machine, they weren't able to do that. And so what that caused was for employers to have to train people to do it themselves. And that's not always the best because it doesn't allow workers to get credentials and badges that show that they've been trained in some expertise. And we really need them to have those credentials that they can carry with them as they progress up the ladder.
You mentioned the pandemic and distance learning. What lessons have we learned about our local economy as a result of that pandemic?
So the interesting thing is that every economic downturn, the Inland Empire was hit hard and came out of the downturn last. That didn't occur this time, and that's different. And it has everything to do with the logistics industry in our area. We're one of the largest movers of goods in the world. And we saw during COVID that people continued to buy things. They just did it online. And so that led to an increase in wages for the truckers and for the warehouse workers. And it also increased the number of jobs because they had to fill the demand that we were putting on the system by having food delivered to our house, having prescription drugs delivered to our house as well. So unemployment recovered much faster this time for the Inland Empire than it has in the past.
You're listening to Education Insight. Our guest is Paul Granio, President and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. So how can we better align our educational training with workforce and business needs to improve inland economic conditions? How can we do that?
We have to listen to each other. And too often, we don't do that. Education needs to reach out to the employer community, and the employer community needs to show up when educators are asking to listen to them. And so we do a lot of work at the Inland Empire Economic Partnership to be a convener, to bring bi-sector leaders together with people that teach, people that create curriculum, and to listen. And it's not always easy, right? Employers don't have a lot of extra time to go to a lot of meetings. And so we have to make sure that their time and their input is heard and that their time isn't wasted. And then our educators, they carry a huge responsibility in trying to make sure that people have the right tools when they graduate community college, when they graduate from one of our four-year colleges or one of our workforce training programs. And so we have to make sure that people are being trained for the economy of the future and not of the past.
Yeah. You mentioned the workforce, and we're talking about the training of our workforce. What else do we need from each of those to create a vibrant regional economy? Think about that for a quick minute as we take a break. Aligning what we teach our Inland Empire students with the needs of good-paying industries arriving in our region. That's what we're discussing on today's Education Insight. More of our discussion with economist Paul Granio coming up. I'm Lacey Kendall, and this is Education Insight. Welcome back to Education Insight. Coming up, a beloved local special education and work experience teacher for several high schools uses her music to get kids excited. That's later in our show. Before the break, we asked the president and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, Paul Granio, what he believes is needed from our workforce and our local educational institutions to create a more vibrant regional economy. Paul?
Well, I think that as we come out of the pandemic, and we know that virtual work is not something temporary, okay? It's 2 years that people have been working from home in one way or another. And that has forever changed the way that work is going to happen. And I have to believe that we need to find ways to use this technology to help people learn and get trained. And again, as I said, some things you have to do in person, and you have to work on a machine in order to train, right? But a lot can be done virtually. And I think it's a way for us to train more people for jobs. And I think we really need to look at this technology and how we can best put it to use.
Paul, what kind of positive economic effects do the colleges and universities here in the Inland Empire have on an economy like ours?
Oh, I think, every region that has four-year institutions is really lucky. And we have some really fine four-year institutions. I think if you look at my alma mater, Cal State San Bernardino, work that's being done in the School of Entrepreneurship to help people create companies, work that's being done in cybersecurity. Cal State San Bernardino, one of the leaders in training young people for jobs in cybersecurity. And if you look at education, so many of our teachers are graduates of Cal State San Bernardino. Yeah. It is important to our workforce, and it's important to the economy. And if you look in Riverside at the University of California, Riverside, it's a Research One institution. They're doing fantastic research, certainly in agriculture and citrus, where it has its beginnings, but also in clean truck technology, the future of the logistics industry and how we meet our sustainability goals. A lot of wonderful work goes there. The School of Medicine at UCR, incredibly important to the region's economy and to training people for great paying jobs.
A very recent report from the National Bureau of Economic Research insists that there is a positive correlation between the presence of a research university and the quantity and quality of local entrepreneurship. So can you help regular folks like myself understand why that is?
Well, I think if you look at UC Riverside, right, you have research going on, and that research can then be turned into a company, right? So if you can create a medicine, if you can create some technology, if you can create a code, and then monetize it because it's got a value, then the next step is to incubate your company. And so that also occurs within UC Riverside. And so you let these companies grow to scale, and then they're able to go out on their own. So you're taking ideas, you're figuring out what its worth is, how to monetize it, and then you help to incubate that idea into a company that then becomes an employer. So that's the value of a research university like UCR.
Carrying it from idea to industry.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Education Insight. We're joined by Paul Granio. He's the president and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. Are our schools, colleges, and universities properly preparing students for the career positions coming to the Inland Empire? That is the question we're asking today. So, Paul, is education necessary to earn a living wage in our region right now?
So it's a complicated question, right? We know that a baccalaureate attainment is 21%. So that means the vast majority of our workforce doesn't have a baccalaureate degree. And interesting that 20% of our employed residents travel outside of the region, mostly for white collar jobs. And so those are higher paying jobs, but they're located in Orange County, they're located in San Diego, they're located in Los Angeles. And so that's where we see the largest commute out of the region. And so I think that there are, within our economy, there are sectors that have a low bar to education. And for some people, they're going to be their path, right? Something technical, and that's okay. But I think that it's also proven that overall earnings in your lifetime greatly increase if you do have a baccalaureate degree. So I think in the long term, for us to diversify our economy, we need to continue to push for baccalaureate attainment for our young people. We need to make sure that we have strong technical opportunities at the community colleges for people to get good paying jobs. And then I think as a region, we need to focus on the attraction of different sectors to the economy that we don't necessarily have yet. And as our region goes over the 5 million mark relatively soon, I think that there's an opportunity for us to grow our professional services in the region and keep some of those better paying white collar jobs here.
Over the last few months here on Education Insight, we've heard some differing opinions on this. Does higher education translate to higher wages in the Inland Empire? I'd like to hear your viewpoint as an economist, our top economist.
Well, we're lucky to have a group of real economists with PhDs, right?
Yeah.
I believe, right, because I'm a first generation college graduate, right, that my life is better because I have that degree. That degree opened my mind to different things that I hadn't thought about, right? And I think that a baccalaureate degree is important to rounding out a person. And because of that, I was able to, go on to get a master's degree, and that, increases and widens your mind. So now the question is, are there jobs for those people here in the Inland Empire? And I think that's something that we need as a region, again, to continue to work on.
Okay. What knowledge and skills are needed most from the labor supply to support business and economic growth here in the Inland Empire?
That's a great question. And if you talk to employers, you're going to get some really interesting answers. So really what people are looking for are people that can write, people that are analytical in their thinking, people that are good, can work in teams. And I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she can really utilize the iPad in ways that I don't know how, right? But at the same time, right, we need to make sure that she's not always on the iPad, right? We need to make sure she's not always in front of the TV. And so I think that making sure that you're helping young people to be able to think, mathematics, teamwork, very, very important to employers.
Will more college graduates in the Inland Empire result in attracting more businesses to the Inland Empire?
Businesses are going to go where the workforce is. And if you're going to be successful, then you need to have good employees. If certain sectors of the economy can't find those employees, then they're not going to come here. And so, again, I think the tech world is a perfect example. Because of our baccalaureate attainment where it is, it's just not going to pencil out for a company to come here. And so where you see tech thrive is where they can find that workforce. And certainly that's how Silicon Valley came to be. And it's really birthed out of a partnership with Stanford.
Paul, let's talk about the ugly truth here. We know that our Inland Empire post-secondary attainment rate is very low in comparison to other regions. 29%, ranked 98 of 100 of the most populated metro areas. What impact might it have on the economy if this number increased?
So the Inland Empire is the 13th largest metropolitan statistical area, okay, MSA. in the United States. All right. So we are sandwiched in between San Francisco and San Diego. So what does that mean? It means we're a big population center, one of the biggest in the country. Now, if you look at gross domestic product, what we make, we fall to 260th out of 387 MSAs. So we're not making a lot of money. All right.
Yeah.
And that's the tie to education. Okay. If education means better paying jobs, then that means more salary. Right. And nothing shows that disparity to me more than the fact that the 13th largest population center in the United States ranks 260th in gross domestic product. That's why we need more professional jobs. That's why we need to diversify the economy.
Mm-hmm. We know that college graduates nationwide earn more on average, but if we look specifically here at the Inland Empire economy, does that hold true still, Paul?
Yes, it does. It does, right? Education and a baccalaureate degree is a key to the door of a career. And even though we see the younger generation tending to move from career to career, it's still, if I look at my organization, we have a lot of young people that come in with baccalaureate degrees, master's degrees, and once they're able to understand a lot about how an economy works, and they work with the largest employers in the region who are our members, some of the important decision makers of the region, and they make connections, then I'm launching people off to different careers. So I'm always happy to see them succeed, but it leaves me having to go and find new talent, and that's not always easy.
How does the value add of a college degree in our region compare to alumni in other job markets? And when when I say value add, for those that don't know what that means, the financial outcome of a college degree for us compared to graduates in other job markets.
That's an interesting question. I would say, being an alum of an institution gives you hopefully continued connectivity with institution and a network of people. My best friends are still my fraternity brothers that I met in college. We've been in each other's weddings. We watched our children grow up, and we like to vacation together. And so, but that also translates to help in careers, right? When you have a network. And I think it's important for people to utilize those networks in order to make sure that if they're looking for a new job, they're able to find one.
What would you say, Paul, that students in the Inland Empire need to know about the workforce and economy today and in the next 5 to 10 years? What advice would you give those listening?
Great question. They need to know that the economy today is not going to be the economy tomorrow. We are 5 years away from cars that will fly, okay? That there'll be drones that are going to transport goods and people. That artificial intelligence is going to replace some jobs. And I'm not talking about warehouse jobs. I'm talking about accountants, because technology is going to be able to do things faster and more accurate than a human being can. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be jobs, but in order to get those jobs, you're going to have to understand where things are moving. And so I think for young people, they need to know what's going on in the world, right? They need to understand how an economy works. They need to understand that there are no taxes unless there are jobs. And so very much, I think it's going to require the next generations to be very nimble.
Paul, I'm willing to bet that you live, work, and invest in the Inland Empire. So for those listening, from your standpoint, what does make the Inland Empire a good place to do all three of those things?
It's location, 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 right? And the nature of our region, right? There is no Los Angeles, there is no Chicago, New York in the Inland Empire. But what we have are some really great communities. with history and with opportunities for recreation, opportunities for sports. We're a short drive to the ocean, short drive to the mountains, short drive to the desert.
Yeah.
We have a world-class concerts, and that people come from all over the world to Coachella, to Stagecoach. The Temecula Valley and its wine and its recreation is a destination, right? The mountains of Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead, beautiful places. The high desert, right? There's so much that you can do, and the ability to, I think, take advantage of all of that is what makes our region special. And it's the interconnectivity, right? It is 2 counties, but people work and play in one and do the other and move to the other flawlessly, right? So I think we just have to appreciate all that we have.
Paul Granio, the president and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. Mr. Granio, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Lacey.
As we close today, we take a moment to honor one of our inland educators, Ms. Micah Justice, an itinerant teacher and work experience coordinator for Moreno Valley Unified School District. For nearly 2 decades, she's taught K-12 students as a specialized academic instructor. As a work experience teacher, she's now helping kids to prepare to graduate and enter the workforce. Uniquely, Ms. Justice has, throughout the years, used one of her own skills to get those students excited about their education and about their future. Her skill? Her music. One particular song she wrote for her kids and has performed for them is meant to make Shakespeare more enjoyable. We leave you this week with that song from Ms. Justice, music co-written by Chase Walker. It's a song called Romeo. This is Education Insight. Thanks for joining us.
Sworn my love, and I'll no longer be Capulet. 'Tis but thy name that is mine enemy. Thou art thyself, though not to Montague. What's Montague? Is it hand nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man? Oh, be some other name. Oh, be some other name. Oh, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if that will not be, but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be Capulet. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet? So Romeo would, were he not Romeo cold, retain that deep affection which he owes. Without that title, Romeo, doff thy name, and for that name, which is no part of thee, take all my steps. Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not be but sworn
Join us again next time for
Education Insight.